Star photographs versus portrait photographs. Both are similar as you're using the same equipment, but at the very same time very different with regards to setup and style. To explain what I mean, I'm going to show you step by step how I approach both scenarios and explain how I produce the final image. For this demonstration, I'm going to show my setup using graphics, so it's easier to understand. The equipment I'll be using will be 2 softbox lights, 2 spotlights and a reflector. So here's the studio with a black paper background all set up and a stool for my test subject to perch on. First things first, I'll add the key or main light. As you can see in the graphic, I've added a single softbox light at a 45-degree angle to the stool, but turned in such a way so the light hits the subject but doesn't spill onto the background. Speaking of which, let's add him into the scene. So with just one light, it's not a bad shot, and to be honest, I've taken some wonderful studio photos, particularly with a dark background, as that single light really brings out some lovely shadows. So going back to our example, by adding a single light, it's looking pretty good, but let's add some more. Next up, I'm going to add a reflector into the scene. The reflector will bounce some of the light from the single softbox back onto the subject. The reflected light instantly softens some of the dark shadows. It also adds some light to Bradley's neck, jawline and hair, making the image appear less flat than with just a single light. Okay then, let's carry on. To really add some depth to the shot, finally I'm going to bring in a rear spotlight to highlight the shoulder, neck and hair. So as Bradley here is obviously three-dimensional, it makes sense to light him from the front and from the back. Now this is how I light most portrait shots, as in indeed the style I use when shooting star photos. These 2 handsome gentlemen, who are both photographed using 2 lights and a reflector, although they represent 2 separate companies, for me it's important when photographing a collective that the style needs to match. So looking again at the finished star photo, yeah, it's looking pretty good. But if we have a look at Bradley, we can see he has a prop with him, which of course is his hat. So I'm now going to approach photographing the subject in a more portrait style, as the focus can be more on the prop as it's a part of his identity and it needs to be highlighted. Okay, so let's reset the studio so it's just the background. So I'm going to start by adding a rear spotlight pointing directly straight down onto Bradley's hat. So already with one light we have a totally different look, with the brim and the top of the hat being highlighted, which already makes it stand out more than it did last time around. Okay, let's add some more. Next I'm going to add a small spotlight directly behind the subject in order to light his hair. Now this is an effect I love to use, especially if the subject has hair to light, then why not use it? Okay, time now to add the main softbox light to the scene to light the subject from the front. Now that I've added some extra light, the shot is better balanced, so I've dropped down a couple of f-stops on my camera. This means I'm letting in less light, so the background automatically appears darker. Bradley, who was looking a bit washed out, now thanks to the main light, has more colour about him. So to finish off the portrait, I've brought in a second softbox at half power instead of a reflector to fill in the shadows. By lighting the right hand of the shot, Bradley's left arm can now be seen properly, as it was in shadow in the previous photo. The final composition is a lovely example of a portrait shot, where I was able to give a bit more thought about how to make it more appropriate to the individual. Although I always say that you can take a photograph anywhere, as I had a bit more space to spread out in the studio, by using 4 lights I had the chance to light the subject in 360 degrees, which gave me the freedom to have a bit more fun and to try to capture his personality. Of course, for a bit more interest, you can change the background colour, which gives a totally different look. You can move the lights around or use a lens with a large aperture to blur the subject, bringing the features that you have focused on into the forefront. But that, of course, is a story for another time.